Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. And if you're watching this channel, you're probably smarter than the average bear. I think people like when I say that sometimes, so I'll keep doing it. So, telling the truth as XR demands in its list of demands is really going to be all important if we are going to make our way out of the mess of climate change. If being the operative word. Doubtful, given the high dollar interest in keeping people misinformed. This is a really big business. This is called corporate media, or if you want to go a little farther, state media. The corporations are in lockstep with the state. It's not state-run or state-owned, but it's state-run nonetheless, because the media corporations all do the bidding of the state being the corporations, right? So, propaganda and misinformation are quite effective. I just need to look at my Facebook timeline or even this comment section sometimes to see what kind of buffoonery people will repeat from their corporate news masters. Doubtful, of course, that we can change our course, but we can start with ourselves. We can still tell the truth at a personal level, and perhaps that can help shift things on a planetary level. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the skies above me, and the cloud cover that was created this morning by a bunch of contrails is doing who knows what to the weather on a planetary scale. No doubt. They're back. They've been gone for a long time, and they came out the other day because it was like going to be 100 degrees on some random day in October, and they didn't want that to happen, so they threw up a bunch of clouds, and then all of a sudden it was cool again, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's sweater weather, sweater weather, sweater weather." Anyways, tell the truth. It's a good place to start. And with that, I wanted to get into this interesting article that references Snowpiercer. If anybody has seen that movie, Guy McPherson references this movie, or used to. It's a weird movie. It's not that good. But it's basically a movie about the fact that, so in order to combat global warming, the powers that be decided that they were going to do some geoengineering. The geoengineering went wrong and turned the Earth into a frozen, snow-covered wasteland. And then so there were people on a train riding around and around and around in a circle on this train track, to stay alive because it was too cold outside to survive. It's that part of the premise was really wacky. But the first part of the premise, I think, was totally in the realm of reality. So this is titled "Frozen Earth and Snowpiercer is a Grim and Possible Future of Our Warming Planet." What's the date on this? This is 9 days ago, by Mindy Weisberger. In the not-so-distant future, humanity's last survivors ride a vast, never-stopping train across a frozen Earth. The fictional world of Snowpiercer, a new TV series airing on... Oh, and they turned it into a TV series because it was that compelling. Airing on TNT in early 2020 is a grim one. A botched attempt to reverse runaway global warming has left Earth blanketed in ice and snow. Only a few thousand people, some wealthy and privileged, and many desperate and wretched, survive, saved by a billionaire's pet project, a beast of a super train named Snowpiercer that extends for miles, equipped to ride the rails until Earth is habitable again. They're going to wait out this ice age that they created. The series is based on a 1982 French graphic novel, Le Transpersonnage. Hey, I'm not talking to you, Siri. As was the 2013 movie Snowpiercer, directed by Bong Joon-ho. At New York Comic Con on October 5th, the show's cast and creators presented a glimpse of the broken Earth, the strange arc that barrels ceaselessly onward, and the surviving humans who ride on board. TNT's version of that tale unfolds 7 years after the global climate catastrophe and the train's departure, when untold millions of people, not to mention all of Earth's animals and plants, were left behind to die. How long do you think that train would have to go? Oh, that's just so dumb. That is the worst premise for a movie or a TV show. But anyways, I mean, it's something, I guess. Bleak as the story is, it represents a logical extension of what happens when you continue to ignore science and you're forced to make a rash decision about how to save your planet, says actor David Diggs, who plays ex-homicide detective Andre Layton on the show. The dire scenario is especially relevant today. Unprecedented and human-driven climate change is raising sea levels, erasing glaciers and sea ice, and spawning dangerous wildfires, widespread droughts, and intense heat waves. In fact, recent climate-related news fueled a sense of urgency for Graham Manson, executive producer and showrunner of Snowpiercer. It lit a fire under me to want to tell this story now, Manson told Live Science. Global ice ages have frozen Earth in the past, but with accelerating climate change heating things up, is a planet-wide deep freeze even possible anymore? And could trying to artificially cool Earth save the planet, or would it trigger a cascade of consequences that produce a frozen wasteland like that in Snowpiercer, or something that's even worse? Between 750 million and 580 million years ago, three to four dramatic ice ages froze nearly all of Earth's surface for about 10 million years at a stretch. So that's how long that train would have to keep going. Sure. During these periods of intense cold, average global temperatures plummeted to minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit. These frigid conditions earned the planet the nickname Snowball Earth. Moving on down. Could artificially cooling the planet through geoengineering trigger an ice age or create a snowball Earth? Physically, it's not inconceivable, said Gavin Schmidt, a climatologist and director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies in New York City. Schmidt outlined one such geoengineering method. If you put stuff into the atmosphere that's white and reflective, that reduces the amount of solar radiation coming in and makes the planet colder, he told Live Science. It's similar to what happens when big volcanoes erupt. For example, in 1991, the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines spewed 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, causing global temperatures to drop by about 1 degree Fahrenheit, or 0.5 degrees Celsius from 1991 to 1993. Removing excess CO2 from the atmosphere could also cool the planet. One way to do that would be infuse the ocean with nutrients to encourage the growth of phytoplankton, microscopic marine algae that take up CO2 during photosynthesis. They would draw down the CO2 from the atmosphere that would sink into the bottom of the ocean. Then everything would be back to normal. But take these procedures too far, block too much solar energy, or siphon off too much atmospheric CO2, and the result could be a global deep freeze, Schmidt said. Current atmospheric CO2 levels are about 410 parts per million, while pre-industrial levels hovered at around 280 parts per million. Schmidt said, dip down 180 parts per million, and then you're in ice age territory. What's more, there are serious ethical concerns about launching such drastic actions to reset Earth's climate. If we didn't live here, it'd be much easier to play with the planet's climate, but the consequences involve potentially billions of people. We can't even get a global agreement to reduce CO2, so the chances that we'd have a global agreement to put stuff in the atmosphere and change the climate seem very slim. Well, this is where individual governments come into play, right? Individual governments can do whatever they want. The army, mandated by, the defense of our nation, can engage in any kind of experiments that they want to engage in. Anyways, that's all I'm going to read of the article. But yeah, they can engage in any kind of experiments they want to engage in, and they already have. We already have evidence that they have done this. They have changed the weather or changed weather patterns in warfare. In Vietnam, there's very famous instance of us changing the weather patterns over Vietnam to impact their country. We have evidence this is going on. In China, they're doing it. Volkswagen, a corporation in Mexico, so not a sovereign nation, but a corporation, is just like, well, we're going to do this. They're implementing geoengineering or weather engineering, not geoengineering, but weather engineering, to protect their cars from hail. The idea that the military isn't doing this already, it just seems to be extremely naive. And this gets back to telling the truth, right? We can't even tell the truth about what we're actually doing to the climate on an above ground level. And then even on a deeper level, we can't, we're not able to tell the truth about what, institutions, government institutions, military institutions, scientific institutions, what they might be doing already as far as experiments and implementation. We don't even know. I'd like it to be an acceptable issue to take up and to talk about. I know that it gets into the land of like, they're spraying us and they're all controlling the weather. I know it gets into that area. It doesn't have to get into that area if it becomes something that people can talk about openly and freely and not just be smeared as a conspiracy theory. That's just my take on it. But obviously it would be great if we could just accept and recognize and acknowledge the geoengineering we're doing through climate change and accept that that's fact and that's science and that we can all talk about that openly and talk about ways in which we can actually go forward as a planet wide, like not just humans, but all animals and plants. Like how are we going to survive this? We're not going to survive if we can't even have factual dialogue on that issue. So tell the truth indeed. Let's tell the truth and let's not shame. Well, tell the truth, shame the devil is the quote, right? But let's tell the truth and let's not shame people who are trying to talk about the things that might be in the realm of truth, but we're a little too afraid or reluctant to take up. I'm not talking about climate denialism on any level, so please refrain from all that stuff, guys. The 2 or 3 guys that follow this channel that, want to get into the, grand solar minimum or vents in the ocean or blah, 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 blah. No. We already know all about that. Anyways, that's all I'm going to cover today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.